So we're less than 2 weeks from heading into a new year with 2023, and there are some pretty high expectations overall for the year, whether it's from Microsoft, Sony, or Nintendo. But one thing that is being brought up quite a bit this year is the Switch itself and how it's feeling a bit old. And if you consider the fact that when we get past March of 2023, we'll be in the console's 7th year, yeah, it would be old if you take a look back at Nintendo's history when it comes to systems and how they sort of space out their generations when they launch them. And yeah, there is a cross-gen period as well, but you figure the Switch is coming up on a point in time where Nintendo will either introduce the next-gen thing or treat this like some different and new generation, as they have kind of mentioned they were looking at this being a longer generation. But something I've noticed online is if it's brought up that we kind of need new hardware, a revision, an upgrade, the next gen leap, people don't seem that thrilled with the idea. Well, I decided to ask Twitter, and I figure we'll take a look at that here today. So if you guys enjoy the video, make sure you like it down below and subscribe to the Spawnwave Plus channel. So let's head over here. This is one I posted up on Twitter, which you may as well follow me on Twitter so you can participate in all these different threads that, just breaks down into madness half the time. I said, I'm genuinely curious how long people want the current Switch to last. Seems whenever it's brought up that the Switch is showing its age heading into its 7th year, many people will push back on the idea. And they do. Like, there was an article that went up today from, I think it was The Verge, and they used some very, I'll say, bombastic language in general throughout the article, saying that the Switch sort of failed throughout 2022 when it comes to the performance aspect of the majority of their games. And they're not completely wrong on that. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 was, I would say, a standout. And even that, if you look at the technical numbers, the resolution, it is low. We do see Monolith Soft going above and beyond with their upscaling technique that most likely will be used in Tears of the Kingdom in May. But like, if that was on, I'll just say, the PlayStation 5 or the Xbox Series or on PC, yeah, it would look noticeably better. Let's be real. And that has to do with the Switch using a chip from 2015 at this point and being limited compared to where we are now versus even 2017. Yes, it was sort of behind the times then, but when it comes to the mobile side and fitting into this hybrid concept, that's the best chip NVIDIA was able to produce at the time, and Nintendo took advantage of NVIDIA not being sure where to place the X1. And we had some very impressive ports with things like Doom and Wolfenstein and The Witcher 3, so it has at least been able to punch, I would say, above its weight with several games that have gone to the system. But after asking this question, I looked through some of the replies, and I noticed one good example, and I'm sure a reasoning that has people getting kind of annoyed when this is brought up is OJ mentioned that people are tired of the fake outs, of the whole Switch Pro is coming every year since 2020 rumors didn't help either. And yeah, that has been a thing for years now. And we would all make videos on the different comings and goings of news and rumors and the Bloomberg articles, Nintendo firing back at Bloomberg, and what was the wording here that the president of Nintendo said at their shareholders meetings. And again, new hardware is genuinely interesting from these different console manufacturers, so it's not surprising that it would pull in a lot of people, and then we would get something like a Switch OLED or a Switch Lite, and it didn't work to improve on the core functionality of the system when it came to visuals or resolution, any of that kind of stuff there. And everyone on YouTube pretty much did it for the last couple of years. A lot of excitement, like I said, around that. So heading into 2023, you start talking about the idea of new hardware from Nintendo that would be more powerful, and I'm sure there's some apprehension because we've been burned many times in the past now, just throughout this generation. See, Ornil says it's been showing its age for a while, but I think the problem is that next gen has been out for a while, and it's not worth developing Switch versions of a lot of games anymore. Optimizing can be done, but now it's even more work. And while some just don't get announced, I'm sure some of these developers play around with the idea of a Switch version, but it just doesn't make it out of just their R&D sector where they attempt, they test, and it's just like, ooh, we can't release this. Others, they're going to do a Switch version, or at least they say they will. We'll see. But it comes out much later. Like Hogwarts Legacy, that's going to be the last version that releases over the summer in 2023. We know Marvel's Midnight Suns got a pretty big delay. We don't know when that game is coming out on the Switch. And the fact that the Switch is just a different architecture compared to the Xbox and the PlayStation and even PC, yeah, there is going to be a decision made when you start developing a game. Will there be a Switch version? Can we make this done? Is there a port studio available if we can't? And there's just a lot of logistics that go into it there, despite the larger install size, which I'll admit, back when they were pushing the Switch and it released and it was doing really well, I thought, wow, if it gets to 100 million, how can people deny the Switch then when it comes to moving these ports over? Well, we're still seeing it. Donald says, what would they even launch alongside a new Switch? Splatoon and Mario Kart still have DLC coming. Zelda is out in May. It's too soon for new Smash Brothers, and Pokemon Gen 2 is probably 2025. So 3D Mario and Metroid Prime 4 are the only real candidates for the next 2 years. Yeah, the Mario Kart stuff with the DLC does kind of throw a bit of a wrench into the plans that I would have had, which you launch new Mario Kart with the system. It's the most popular game on the Switch. Yeah, it's a Wii U game, but just the Mario Kart brand in general is the most popular thing Nintendo has going for them now. And I don't know how you release the next big Mario Kart game when downloadable content and a roadmap is still in place for Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Yeah, Mario Kart will probably wait until 2024 at the earliest, and that's wild stuff, because that means that Mario Kart 8 Deluxe would be a 10-year game. That's really good live service for Nintendo, I gotta admit. But when it comes to titles, it does sort of depend on what Nintendo wants to do right now. Do they want to go to next gen? Do they want to do something like a new Nintendo Switch revision like they've done with the 3DS? And if they were going to go that route, you place it next to The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. It's pretty obvious that would do really well alongside of a new system. Otherwise, Metroid Prime 4 and a Mario game, the next big 3D one, that would probably work, I would say, to launch, especially if Metroid Prime 4 would take advantage of the next-gen Switch. Yeah, I think Retro Studios could do some really impressive stuff there, as they've shown in the past. But then I do see some people mention, like Todd here, that a new Switch can't come soon enough. Assuming the new Switch is backwards compatible, you don't lose anything, and new adopters have a huge library of software. The tech is holding back game performance. So I do see people say, yeah, it is time for a new Switch at this time. I'd like to see better performance out of games, and I would like to see a cleaner image on my 75-inch 4K TV or something like that. The backwards compatibility thing is interesting, and I almost wonder if are some concerns that Nintendo would do something weird when they go to the next gen. We can't count out Nintendo. They're a strange company. That's one of the reasons that people are so drawn to them, because you don't know what they're going to do. I assume they will do backwards compatibility going to the next generation, because they have shown that in the past. But a lot of things have to conform back to the Switch's setup for it to be 100% backwards compatible. The Switch Lite is not 100% backwards compatible with the Switch. There are certain games you cannot play on that system because it doesn't use Joy-Cons, for example. So they've already kind of broken that mid-gen, which is weird. Even the Switch OLED doesn't work with Labo necessarily, and I know it's Labo, but you see what I mean here. It's not necessarily cut and dry when it comes to that. Like with the next Switch, they would have to have at least some Joy-Con support. Do you really want those drifting Joy-Cons to roll into next gen with you? King Rob says people have been saying this since the Switch came out. It's nothing new. However, whatever anyone thinks or says or thinks, the Switch is what it is. That hasn't stopped some seriously amazing games from being made for it, like Monster Hunter Rise or the port of Persona 5 Royal. Yeah, I don't think anyone says that the games aren't fun on the Switch. I think people just look at that and say, I'd like them to just look better and still be fun. I don't really know why it's one or the other. It's thinking the game can either be fun or it can look really good. Well, no, you should be able to have both. And consumers, I believe at this time, yes, can ask Nintendo for a better experience with their Switch games when it comes to the technical side of things, because Nintendo, I think, has it locked down when it comes to coming up with interesting, innovative, and fun experiences. Like Splatoon 3. People will look at that from the outside in, and they're like, how did this beat Call of Duty, right, as an example, for the multiplayer game of the year? Splatoon 3 is a unique and fun experience that is a blast to play with your friends online in that multiplayer setup. So the thing is, again, Nintendo, when it comes to some of their larger titles, it can be really tough sometimes with the way that these games will look. As I mentioned, people really lauded the way that Xenoblade Chronicles 3 looked, but that did have its own technical issues behind the scenes when it came to resolution, and really it could just be better overall on a newer Switch, especially if it ended up being a mid-gen refresh, quote-unquote, a new Nintendo Switch, but all the games were compatible across the board. In that instance, I don't really know why people would care if they like their current Switch and they're not being forced to upgrade to that. In fact, for people who like what they have now with the Switch, you should be hoping that a Switch Pro is actually real. Elijah King says, 2024, I understand the want for new hardware, but I also want to get enough use out of my Switch. They've compared it directly here to the PlayStation 4 from 2013 all the way up to 2020, showing that the Switch would last into 2024. I am curious how many people want the Switch, to the current iteration, to go all the way into 2024. I assume Nintendo would stick to their March or April, basically springtime release for the next system, but what if they went to holiday 2024? Would that be too long for people? Also, the PS4 did get a PS4 Pro 3 years after it came out, with a lot of that being that the market dictated that 4K was going to be adopted maybe faster than Sony or Microsoft were expecting, especially Sony. They make TVs, so you figure they would have had their finger on the pulse for that one, but they pivoted quickly, dropped the PlayStation 4 Pro, actually with technology that AMD didn't even necessarily have out fully to consumers with video cards, just to get it on the shelves in time for the holiday 2016 push for consoles. And yeah, a lot of what Sony was doing then, 4K TVs. In fact, I feel like if there was a more powerful Switch option right now, no one would really care when next gen starts necessarily, because again, the games are fun, and there would just be an option for people who want just better visuals. Again, it's strange that there is pushback on this, other than it being burned a lot in the past, and that I can understand, because the fake outs have been pretty consistent going forward. Trust me, we've been covering it here as places like Bloomberg and others have reported on it. Also, I do have to point this out, not to pick on them for Super Player, but people also at times, I think it's because Nintendo launched it in March, they tend to be kind of confused on how old the Switch actually is. Like they mentioned, people keep exaggerating the Switch's age, some saying 7 or 8 years. It's in year 5 and will be year 6 in starting March 2023. And they attempt to kind of line it up here, but really it's March 2017 to March 2018. That's year 1. March 2018 to 2019 is year 2. Then we go to 2020 year 3, 2021 year 4, and now 2022 at year 5. So going up now to March 2023. That'll be year 6 completed, which means, yes, after March 2023, starting in April, we'll be in year 7. I also see MVG here with the people coming for me after asking this question, and then Sean just saying good luck. Sean's been under attack constantly when it comes to this stuff with the Switch, but he does bring up sales a lot. I'm mostly just getting a feel for it here with a lot of people. How are you feeling about the Switch currently when it comes to the technical side of things, or the frame rate or visuals? Do you think it's time to hear more about what's next for the Switch? Not necessarily an OLED offering or a smaller, the light version. When it comes to Nintendo pushing forward with technology with NVIDIA, which is interesting to see the Tegra continue to evolve for what Nintendo would more than likely have as a fully customized chip. The X1 was so stock, it was able to be completely hacked by checking the NVIDIA manual for it. So think about that. Going into next gen, or even some sort of revision, that's a spot where NVIDIA and Nintendo would sit down and work to customize the chip to their needs. So one of the other reasons I would like to see what's next when it comes to hardware. But let me know what you guys think about this down in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.